All right, Dan, I will just turn it over to you.
One of the ones that I hear from a number of churches are like, we used to have kids, but it doesn't seem like we have kids anymore. Sometimes what you see going on in church, it's a level deeper than children's ministry. It's not just like, well, these kids don't come to our church anymore, or the kids who grew up in our church left to go to other churches. That's not just because, well, they wanted a children's ministry and they had a better children's ministry than ours. It's that they went to a bigger church, and bigger churches understand there's mutual disappointment because you can't make 400 people happy or 500 or 600 people happy. They operate that way already, where if you're a church of 40 or 50, a lot of times you think like, if I'm not happy, I'm calling the pastor up on Monday. Once you let go and once you give up control, you've got to be ready for what these younger people are going to do. My little phrase with this is, if I let my kids cook supper, I got to be happy with hot dogs and mac and cheese, because that's what they're going to make. You can't say, well, hey kids, you didn't cook supper the way I want it because I want this and this. If they make it, they're going to make what they want. And I think that's one of the struggles in churches. It's like, we want these younger people to grow up in church and we want them to stay, but we don't want to eat mac and cheese and hot dogs. And we're like, no, you just don't understand that. You've got to eat that because that's what they like and that's what makes them happy. You've got to find your happiness in them. And I think that's sort of the end of the sermon in mutual disappointment, is like, well, does that mean that we just have churches where we're all the time going around grumpy and sad and upset, like, I don't like this church, it's just been changed from what it used to be? And it's like, no, you find your happiness in what makes other people happy. And kids can do that. You get kids in there, and some of the simplest things just make them happy, and just fun stuff. And it's just harder, when kids are happy, to not be happy with them. And you're like, man, this is just so great.
Hey,
Go
Dan,
ahead.
if a pastor is, say, 50s, 60s, even 70, and he feels like he is like two, maybe even three generations away from someone who's 8, 9, 10 years old, how do they start? And most people in their churches are their age. So how would they start?
All right. So when to me, this is like one of the things with kids, and again, it kind of used a family analogy like we do a lot of times. Sometimes we think, hey, we need laser lights, we need the smoke show and the media and all this stuff we don't understand. The reality is, most kids want a story read to them. They want FaceTime and they want personal attention. If we have a good news camp, and if you look at good news camp, there's nothing fancy. There's nothing really modern. It's very rustic. We don't even have air conditioning. You know what I mean? And I know some people are like, well, my goodness, why in the world do kids come there? And I said, well, the secret is, everybody who's there is a volunteer. They're there because they love Jesus, they love kids, and they want to have fun. And it's hard if you get put in an environment where you love Jesus and you love kids and you want to have fun, to not have fun. And I know Pastor John, I see him nod his head. I think about this. He plays a review game every week where he like gives out the trophy and stuff like that. And it is just, it's so great to watch, but it's not expensive and it's sort of corny, but kids love it. You want to share what you do, John?
I learned a long time ago is you got to get the kids, like, get them competing with each other, and then they play for this trophy every week.
There you go.
They never get to touch it. They never get to take it home or anything, but they'll listen and they'll answer the questions for this trophy each week. So I'll have it out this afternoon.
Yeah.
And just I let use the competition themselves. So what I usually say to them is, I'm very tired today. I don't want to teach. Can somebody else teach? And the kids love that. So they get to sit in my chair and they fold up the picture and describe what's going on there, and I ask them questions about it. So the last little while I've been saying, oh, I'm feeling tired. Can you teach today?
Yeah. And so the secret of that is, if you have fun, the kids have fun.
Right.
And if you look at John play this game, he loves, I mean, he hams it up and it's so much fun. Just like you saw about being tired and stuff. He's playing with the kids, he's having fun. And that's like, if you were a grandpa, that's what you would do with your kid. Or if you're a great grandpa, you'd have fun with your kids, you'd play a game with them, you'd have inside jokes, and you would do all that stuff. It's the exact same thing in church. You know what I mean? And again, you don't need all of the videos and the technology and everything, because kids love to be told a story. Kids have to be important to you rather than a bother. And I think that's the biblical pictures that we see, is like, when they looked at children, they're just a bother. And Jesus said, no, these kids are actually important. And in churches, it's kind of the same thing.
Can you explain, if a church or a pastor has a desire to reach out to children, are there steps to go through, or, for example, to go to the schools and say, hey, we would like to come in and get the kids or teach them? Does CEF offer any materials, so forth like that?
Yes, we do.
How to get started?
Yeah, the short version is, and this is my advice to anybody who says we're trying to find more kids. The reality is, 100% of all the kids in your neighborhood are in one building all week long. If I was talking to pastor, I said, hey, you can reach 100% of the children in your district. You laugh, you're like, there's no way you can reach 100%. But the reality is 100% of them are just down the street from you in a building. If you get access to that building, you get access to those kids. And I talk, the illustration you sometimes, is the difference between the frog and the anteater. The frog sits on the lily pad. He waits for a bug or two to fly his way, and then he hits it when they're over the lily pad. Or the anteater goes to the tree and starts breaking it down and going inside. And that's what you need. You want anteater churches rather than frog churches. You want to go after these kids. You have a right to be there as a club, and people understand clubs. We have chess clubs to get study chess. If you want to put on a play, you can do a drama club. If you want to learn about God, you can do a good news club. If your school does clubs, you can come in and you can do it that way. And so that's one of the ways that you can get in, is by offering a club. And again, there's no bait and switch in this. It's not like, oh, we said this was homework club, but really we're going to not do homework. We're going to teach you the Bible. No, if it's a homework club, you need to do homework. That's why parents sign up for homework club. But there's a lot of parents who sign up their kids for religious clubs, not necessarily because their kids are religious, but they think it would do their kids some good. Just like, so you can go there as a club. And again, CEF offers materials. We offer help with that. Some people are doing it on their own, just depending. Pennsylvania is a little bit more unique because a number of independent organizations, not just CEF, have borrowed, these ideas. And then we do what they call release time clubs. Release time's a little bit different. In Philadelphia, there's a lot of Muslims. And so the Muslims have gone to the state of Pennsylvania and said, we want to pick our kids up on Friday and take them to the mosque, because it's real important that our kids pray at the mosque. So the state of Pennsylvania has made that accommodation. Now, you can't accommodate one religious group and not another one. So CEF comes in and we says, we would like to pick up the kids in a bus, take them to the church and tell them a Bible story. They can't tell you no. They might not like it, but they can't, because they do it. When you look at the actual numbers in Pennsylvania of people who do this, the Muslims are 3 times as many as the Christians. It's just, and that's what I said, it's sad, but they actually care that their kids pray and do things like that, so they sign them up. Most of our kids don't go to church, and the parents are like, well, I know I should do something, but I don't want to get up on Sunday. And so signing a piece of paper is a lot easier than doing anything else. I kind of call it the threshold. The threshold of getting your kid to hear something is a lot easier. Just signing a piece of paper. Here's John, he shows up, Larry's driving the bus, and they go and they come out. The hope, though, is that's not the end. You know what I mean? And so if the kid comes to Good News Club, John can send them an email and say, hey, if your kid likes Good News Club, they really would like children's church, or they would really, and it gives you those opportunities. So you start as a club. A lot of times clubs connect with people who are unchurched. There will be some people who are churched and they have their kids there because they like that, but a lot of them aren't. So you connect with those people, and then you come up with some other ways for them to get to your church. Sometimes it's an outreach event. Sometimes it's a special kids event. Sometimes it just might be Easter or Christmas, and it's just on your regular calendar, and you send a note home and you might say, hey, you might be thinking about going to an Easter service. We want to invite you to ours. It's at this time, at this place. We'd love to have you, bring the kids. I'm the pastor. I teach them already. The reality is, I think when children's ministry sort of got started, the thought was be flashier and better than the other churches in your town, and then the people will migrate to you. And that may have been true before, but that's not happening now. You know what I mean?
Have you found that most principals of schools know about the
No,
law?
they don't.
They don't.
Most of them, because I mean, like I said, most Christians are not taking advantage of this law. And the reason is they said, well, if unsaved people want to hear about Jesus, we're open every Sunday morning. That's the best time for you, but that's the worst time for them. For them, Sunday morning, they're sleeping in, they've got sports, there's other things going on in their life. It's not like they're just sitting there waiting for something to fill that void. Something is already, it's not a vacuum, it's filled up. And usually it's something that they enjoy doing already, like sleeping in or playing sports. The reason I feel that we don't do it the rest of the week is because it's not a good time for us. And, we're making the same excuse the unsaved person does. Well, it's just not a good time. The afternoon, do you know what I have to do in the afternoon? And the reality is, parents, if you ask them, when would be the best time for you to do something with their kids? Most of them would say, well, between 3:30 and 5 o'clock, because I'm still at work, my kids are at daycare, or they're in some other situation like that. And so there are daycares in places, and I know there are several churches that do this, where they'll talk to the daycare and they'll say, can we show up on Monday or Tuesday or something like that? We'll just do the Bible lesson with your kids. If parents come early, that's fine, but give us from our kids get out about 3:30. So give us from 3:45 to 4:45 or 3:45 to 5 o'clock. And that day is yours. And the kids will know, well, this day, instead of, the regular daycare day, we do this. And it's really a winner. Like I said, most daycares that aren't like government daycares, that are just private daycares, they love having this. A lot of them have 8 or 9 kids, and it really lets you build a relationship. But what you find is that's a very hard time to get volunteers. If you would stand up in your church and I say, I need you from 3:45 to 5 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, you will hear, well, I'm picking up so-and-so from practice, or I'm dropping off so-and-so, or I've got this or that. You have all these commitments, and you're like, yeah, that's the best time for them, and you could go in and get it, but you have, it's the same problem. It's not a good time. And so until we sit down and say, yeah, I'm willing to do that, it is going to be hard to get some of those kids, because our schedules just don't match. The schedule of the church kids does not match the schedule of the unchurched kids. And you just can't say, well, we've got something here, come on our schedule. You really have to start saying, well, what does your schedule look like? What's your felt need? And then meet it. And there are places that are doing more and more of that, where they're trying to connect in, because, I talk to children's pastors, I say, this is very easy. You do something on Sunday, you've already gotten ready for it. You already have all the lessons been learned, all the songs, you have all the props or anything else that you need. You just take whatever you did in children's church and just go to the daycare with it. And you can do it twice. And if you're trying to step out and you don't want to go to a school, you say, well, I don't want to do all that. That's fine. But like I said, I think most principals, go back to your original answer, I think most principals don't know about it, because most churches aren't taking advantage. Most churches don't take advantage because you need a bus. You need to show up in a bus, pick them up, and then bus them somewhere, because that's what the Muslims do. And we have to follow the same rule. A lot of schools will let you go there after school and do something for an hour. But there's a lot of places, and I know, like in our area, the YMCA is one of them, where the YMCA does a lot of aftercare, and they're Christian organizations. And a lot of times they're like, yeah, we would be happy for you to come to aftercare once a week and do a Bible lesson.
Now, what if a church has a van, or maybe 2 vans, but they don't have a bus? Can you say, hey, can I take 8 or 10 or kids?
It depends on the school. We had have a hard time being in a van, because none of our schools, we would get more than 8 or 9 kids. So I don't know, maybe if you're in a more rural area or something like that, that would be true. But like your school's not too big, John, and you guys have 60 kids out of 3 grades and stuff. So it's sort of hard to think how small. We have one school where it's 1 deep. So there's only 1 kindergarten, 1 first grade, 1 second grade, but we get 25 kids out of those 3 classes. And so, and that's again, that's a little more rural, and so we get, each class has about 20 kids. So we're getting about 40% of the school to come to Good News Club. So even there, we couldn't do it in a van. But if you only had a couple, maybe you could. There is one place in Edenville that's doing a similar thing where the kids, they're doing it after school. And so the kids stay there, but then they bring the kids home in a van. And so they have about 20 kids and they have 2 vans. And so they'll do their Good News Club, but the parents are like, I can't stop by the school at 5 o'clock. Can you bring them to my house? And so the kids stay at the school. They actually do homework till a little after 4 to make sure all the homework gets done. And then once all the homework's done, then they do their snack. And so at about 4:15, that's when they actually start their club. So from 4:15 to 5, they do their Good News Club. And then at 5, they pile them in.
So as a volunteer, a person comes into a school system and speaks with whoever it is, admin or principals.
Yep.
Said, I would like to do a Good News Club. I have to arrange transportation off of the campus to have it, or can I have it on campus at the school?
There's 2 versions of Good News Clubs in Pennsylvania. We have 2 options. We can do the bus option. That actually happens during the day. So if you look at John's club, that happens from 2:15 to 3:15. So pretty much it's the end of the day. The kids have kind of stopped doing all their stuff. They're waiting for the bell to ring. They can go to Good News Club at the end of the day. And we've worked it out with the principal that this is the best time for them this day of the week and stuff. I think a lot of times we're up against just special stuff like computer lab, library, art. There's nothing really going on. Like I said, it's just they call it specials in our area. We're just up against the special. Sometimes it's recess. And so we pick them up in a bus, we take them to a church, we had home Bible store, and we bring them back an hour later. And that's one option. The second option is to do an after school club. And again, in our area, there's a number of clubs that stay after school. One of the biggest ones in a lot of schools are the drama clubs, where they will want to practice a play or some sort of production. And so they just stay after school. It's similar kind of the way that sometimes you do sports practice after school in the older groups. But so school's over, and for the next hour, there's somebody there at the school. And just like I said, a lot of times they don't do sports in younger elementary age. It's like middle and high school where you just do an hour, but they'll do an hour of clubs, and your kid can just stay for those clubs. Now, if they stay for the clubs, most of the time as a parent, you have to come and pick those kids up. I know very few school districts that will run a bus after school for activities because there's just too far apart. So you as a parent are saying, okay, I'm willing to pick my kid up if it means that they can be in the fall production of Peter Pan or whatever, they're thinking. So that's what they're doing. Good News Club has the same right to be a club. They have the same right to have a room and school resources. Just because it's religious, you can't say, well, this is secular, it's a school play, and this is religious. They can't. Everybody has the same right. Everybody has the same access. The struggle, though, is a lot of parents, if they were willing to drive their kids to and from places for religious things, they're probably going to church. So that's what I said. That's the tricky part of after school clubs is it's hard for you to find volunteers, and the kids who sign up a lot of times would go to church otherwise. So when we talk about these really unchurched kids, you're really talking about doing the bus thing during the school day, like what we do at John's church.
So my question was, even though it's a a club. I know my wife had taught elementary, so it was different. They made her sign a thing saying she could not proselytize while she was being paid there. And I understand that, but I was wondering, uh, do they not want you doing that even though it's on campus grounds?
No, you're allowed to do whatever you want. Now, if you're a teacher and you're still on the clock, you have to do your thing. You
Right.
can't come till after you're off. And that's like I said, you still have to sign stuff too. But the club part is like you can do whatever you want. And again, different schools, like I said, Pennsylvania is a big state, so it's a little bit different, but you're going to the school and asking the school for stuff. So the schools, they're not surprised when you will come and say, hey, we would like to have a kids club. We're going to call it Good News Club. Again, the permission forms usually say, if you sign up for this club after school, you're required to provide transportation.
So can you have the school, you know how kids will get on their bus and go to their stop? Can you, if they sign up for a Good News Club at your church, could they sign up and get on the bus that would drop them off at your church and then arrange for the parents to come pick them up?
You have to arrange that with the school. However, I know of several school districts, again, not in our area, but just in other places that are doing this now. We had a club up in Beaver County where they had a really nice Good News Club, like, 60, 70 kids. And the Satan Club came in and the school board shut down all clubs. They just said, we don't want these people at our school board meetings. And so the principal knew that they were going to lose their Good News Club. And so he went to the bus driver, the people who own the buses for the district, and said, could we do on this day, I want to think it was Friday, could we do on Fridays the bus schedule a little different where these kids can get all on a bus and get to this church? And so the bus company provided a bus so that all the kids going to Good News Club, like all 60 of them, like at John's church, could pile on the one bus, and they drove that bus to the church and they all unloaded. But I think that's because you had a Christian principal, you had a Christian bus company, and they were really upset that Satan clubs came into their community. You'll never hear of a Satan club that goes to a school without a Good News Club. And usually it's a really good news club,
Hey, Dan, let me I want to put you on the spot for a second.
Yeah.
So if a typical pastor in South Central Pennsylvania, they want to start this club, but you have a lot of experience, the laws, what's been done, what hasn't been done. Would you be willing to go with a pastor and just that first initial contact with the principal and say, we would like to start this club, and just have you be with a pastor if they wanted to start this and just see what the response is?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And like I said, I think if there's a CEF person in their county, they would probably do the same thing, or in their area. We want to do everything we can to try to help make that happen. We don't want anybody to say, I wish I could do it, but, and that's sort of, like I said, that's sort of the essence, I think, of what CEF is today. Mm-hmm. I share this phrase a lot, but people have burdens, but they're not entrepreneurs. You need somebody to kind of help you, especially on the strategy side, because you want a strategy that actually pays off and works. A lot of those people, they're not anti-God, they're just anti-Sunday morning. A lot of times you will hear, our door is open. And the reality is, churches have an open door, but like I have a door too, but there's about 8 steps from the driveway to the door. And that's about how long it takes for people to get into a church. They get to one step and they get to another step. And there's several of these things before they finally come in the door. So just saying your door is open isn't enough. You've got to talk about, well, what's going to help get them from 0 to the door. And there's few things that you can do that give you more good relationships with parents than taking care of their kids. So giving their kids the best week of camp in the summer, that goes a long way to having good relations with parents. Or giving their kid a fun time every week where they learn about God. That's it. giving the kid like who's stuck in daycare 1 day a week, that it's not the same boring daycare that they get every other day. That goes a long way with parents, where all of a sudden you're their favorite thing about daycare, even though you're only there for an hour a week. They like that the most. That speaks to parents, especially when kids tell them stuff that you did. They sing songs that you do, and things like that. Like, I'm sure that all of the parents at John's place, they know about the trophy. And if they run into them, they say, "Oh, you're the guy with the trophy," because that's what their kids remember. That's a great icebreaker to, well, I'm more than the trophy. It's at this church. If you want to see it, you're welcome. We're having Easter services, having an Easter egg hunt. Your kid would love coming. We love having kids. We always have plenty of candy for them. We always have plenty of Easter eggs for them to find. And, again, you never know when that person is like, well, so-and-so in our family hasn't done Easter egg hunts since COVID, and now we don't have that tradition anymore. Maybe I want to go do that. Or, maybe I want to go take my kid to church on Sunday because we don't ever go to church. That's sort of how this works. So
the last question we have, and then I'll give you the last word. So where does someone go on your website to find out how to move forward with this? And secondly, I'm not sure if you would be willing to come into somebody's church and preach on a Sunday morning and preach on child evangelism.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go anywhere. Website for that is CEF Online. So anybody that wants to know what's going on with CEF, you can go to CEF Online. And they have CEF USA has some things that you can use anywhere. One of the best resources is their website that's called Unite. And so if you're sitting there saying, well, I'd like some of these songs or these stories or these object lessons. Well, if you want a 5-minute object lesson, you can just click that up and all of a sudden it pops in and you can watch that. You want a 4-minute song, you can put it up. They want to find information about CEF, they can go to CEF Online. And if they want to see some of the actual materials themselves, they can go to the Unite YouTube channel. Most of them have the burden. When you preach the sermon, you don't have to say, kids are important, don't you have a burden that they don't go to hell? Yeah, they're all over that. They don't know, well, how am I going to do that? What's going to be the first step? Most of them are surprised when you say public schools, because in their mind, public schools they're a door with a padlock, and there's no way to do any of that. But there are ways in, and they're just normal ways. Like I said before, you have a chess club, you can have a good news club, these type of things. If you have Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts that meet at school, we can do it. Just like you go to Boy Scouts to learn how to tie knots or start fires, you can come to Good News Club and you can learn how to read a Bible verse or hear the gospel or something like that. So that's
what's the best way that a pastor can get a hold of you, either a phone number or email?
Yeah, so I'll send this to you, but my email address is drdancef@comcast.net. I'm Dr. Dan, and then just the letter CEF. And my number is 717-404-2790.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and appreciate your time. Appreciate your heart for reaching out to the kids and your experience. And so anyway, appreciate all that you're doing.